Shabbat Shalom. Once again, it's my honor and privilege to present to you our first speaker, the great Kahan Shaul Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, brothers and sisters. Praise Yahweh. Praise Yahweh for the beautiful Sabbath day, and praise Yahweh for the beautiful, beautiful Golden Feast of Tabernacles. You may be seated. I want to welcome all the brothers and sisters home here. Praise Yahweh. Yahweh brought you through. And also say shalom to everyone who is around the world, friends and enemies who are watching via the internet. We know they're watching, and we pray that you'd pay close attention for these next 8 days here, for the full 8 days of the feast, because you're going to see, you're going to listen to us now or listen to us later. And we do love our enemies, and we want you to get this message. And if you'll just take the words that Yahweh is providing, the last witness Israel, and check it out in your own Bible, take notes and compare and go over this, you'll see that everything he's telling you is the truth. There is no other way. And you're going to see it. You may believe it before it's too late, and you may not, but you're going to believe with seeing very soon. And you know that brings us back here to the grounds. Brethren, Yahweh is going to extremes through his servant Israel to show us that his plan and these prophecies are real. This is real life. You want a reality show? You're going to get one like you've never seen before in a short time here. But the ones that Yahweh is calling out, brothers and sisters, we have to get this plan real in our minds. It's got to become real. More real and more important than anything else that can come along while you're surfing the internet or surfing the channels. Hopefully you're not wasting time doing that. But whatever it is that streams across the screen of your mind, you know, this has to be the most real thing. It's going to be painfully real very soon. But Yahweh inspired Pastor to see this plan, and you've got to see it and understand it. And the only way for anyone else other than him to see it, it's got to be explained and taught and spoken about and written about, just like it did in order for that centurion to believe. Remember, the apostles were underway with the work at that time, and Yeshua was preaching daily, and the word was getting out. The message was getting out, and this man heard it and believed, just like this man in Kenya is getting the message. Now, this last work here, against all these odds, those odds alone would have been, there's no way mankind could have come up with that and dealt with that and tried to formulate that on their own. There's no way. No possible way. But the last work, led and directed by the high priest, Yeshua, also according to prophecy. And remember, he was ascended, before the house of Yahweh was destroyed, and he waited patiently at Yahweh's right hand in Yahweh Shema for the time that the work would be reestablished again. And you think about all that and all the learning that Yeshua must have been doing, and it's just really tremendous. And then you think about being obedient to this calling and doing this work when no one else, wanted to be a part of it. Think about it. It was just Pastor and his family in his living room. And then little by little, people started turning. Then came the first mobile sanctuary in the mobile home, and then the first permanent sanctuary on T&P, and then now here where we are on the 44 acres, this protected place given by Yahweh. And think about when Pastor, I heard it the other day again, and it really struck me when Pastor was a policeman. Now this was prior to 1977, okay, when Pastor quit the police force. And he was had the rent houses, and he was fixing a drain or something in one of the houses, and he was preaching to the people. Do you know that the Creator's name is Yahweh? Now think about this. Think of the They talk about salesmen, knocking on a door and you got to get 99 slams in the face before you get one yes. Think of the persistence. Think of the character it's needed. Think of the trust in the plan of Yahweh that no one else sees, because they're still stuck in the old King James rigmarole. They're stuck. Their brain is on a loop, playing over and over. They can't get out of the rut. And here comes this guy, trying to tell them about the name of Yahweh and the Sabbath day. And, what are you, crazy? Preacher man, they called him on the police force. But he trusted in this plan of Yahweh. And pastor's past and everything he's talking about, I'm going to have to condense a lot of this here, but it's all going to show us what he started bringing out. And I do want to introduce this 13th book of Israel, part 1. Gold, pure fine gold. And please don't neglect to get your copies. And also, I don't have time to discuss this one, but the new children's book, which will be available, you put your orders in on the reverence of Yahweh. And there's so much into that reverence of Yahweh, brethren. If you go back and read that and you see how Pastor was teaching us the peaceful solution way back then as well. What's reverence? It's the deepest form of respect. And as Ecclesiastes said, that's the whole duty of man. What's the purpose? When you use self-control, you're actually forcing yourself to act with respect. And it does take force. You've got to control. It doesn't occur. If it occurred automatically, we wouldn't need a character education program for one, because they'd be doing it without even being told. And if there wasn't a need to make yourself do it because it's not something that a person's carnal mind is inclined to do. What's the carnal mind? Get, selfish. What's the ultimate goal of the peaceful solution? To show care and concern for all beings. That's why Yahweh, Pastor told us last week or the week before, that's why Yahweh created mankind. He didn't need us, but He had care and concern, and He wanted to show that care and concern to a family of beings. That's respect, and that's reverence. So if you go back there, it teaches you, Pastor was giving us these basics, from the very beginning. We didn't recognize it as such. He had to hit us with a few proverbial 2x4s once in a while to, jar our mind. We were still on that loop, the King James endless loop of no salvation, only believe. And now you don't even have to believe. So now their minds don't even have to work that much. You don't even have to kickstart it anymore. Just be whatever you are, is what the Pope is saying. But you can see Pastor push this work. And as Revelations 2:2 shows, and it goes into it in era number 4 in the Lost Faith book. And if you'll read those pages, in my Lost Faith, it's page 73 in the Lost Faith book, talks about it. But in Revelation 2:2, he says, I know your works and your labor and your patience and so on. I want to just hit on this works and labor. Remember, the works is the performing of Yahweh's laws. Those are the works that we have to do. Those are the first works, performing Yahweh's laws. The labor is spreading the message, putting your full trust in that this plan is real. This kingdom is coming. Mankind is going to destroy himself. This plan is real. And you have to believe that with all of your being, or you won't put your 100% into the work. And I've never known Pastor to take a day off of the work, from the day I met him. And that was the first thing I called him. I was on a ship, actually. The first time I ever spoke to Pastor. We were in Norfolk, Virginia, and I had read The Mark of the Beast, and I said, how can one man know so much? That was my question. And then, the Law of Faith was the second book that I ever read from the House of Yahweh. So, it was amazing to me back then how much knowledge this one man had. The scriptures never made any sense. I thought I'd read Revelation. It sounded like a science fiction movie. I was pretty intrigued by it. Beasts and monsters and blowing things up. I thought, well, that'll make a great science fiction movie, but it never meant anything. Read the mark of the beast, and everything falls into place. It's talking about world events today, and everything makes sense. But Pastor has always pushed on us trusting in this plan of Yahweh, seeing the bigger picture. We get so narrow-minded, we can't see beyond our own immediate discomfort or our own immediate problems sometimes. And He gave us a solution for that. It's in the word labors. I know your works and your labor. Now, there's parts of every era up until that seventh era, after the first era, that we need, that's examples for us of what to do and what not to do. And you'll see it if you'll reread that book, okay? And you'll see the what not to do stuff as well. We don't have time to go through that, but Pastor has always focused on doing the work. You got a problem? Get busy with the physical labor. Get your mind off yourself, serve one another, and get your mind on the physical work. And I'll tell you, brothers and sisters, we have a tremendous, and everyone in this room is a part of it, a tremendous team that pulls together and works together, because every part of this work, from the cow barn to the cafeteria, and from the press room to the offices, the sound room, and the work crew, everything, every part of this work is working together to do what? Get this message out. And it is going out, and they're paying attention. So I don't care what job you got. This getting involved in the work puts everything, it keeps your mind off your own troubles and helps you put everything in perspective and to see the big picture like Pastor does. That's the only way he could get through all of this and all the headaches I'm sure we bring to him, on a daily basis. Think of everyone in this room and every phone call. There's not enough minutes, and not even in the phone plan, I mean in a day, to handle it. But he does it by keeping the big picture in perspective, keeping his mind on this plan and the goal. And tells me, get your mind off of that and get your mind on the plan and the work. This is the secret to getting through it and getting it done. Just get back to work. And you'll realize you can deal with whatever problem is in front of you. Whatever's got you down. Whatever makes you feel low. Whatever makes you feel anything. And the ones that left out of here, they got tired of doing the work. They grew weary, and they got their mind on something else. They thought there was something better. But pastors taught us all, and in this book too, I want to just cover these few verses here. On page 129, he was teaching us about the gold then also. In Revelation 3 and verse 18, I counsel you to buy gold. He says Yahweh's first counsel to the Laodiceans is to buy gold tried in the fire from Him, that you might be rich. Yahweh wants us to be rich, but it is not the wealth of this world that matters. It is being rich in the faith that matters. Yahweh shows that this rich faith is the laws He gave. The gold is the laws, the gold and oil, the teaching of the laws. The apostles were rich, though they had little of the material things of this world. He says, financial blessings mean nothing where salvation is concerned. There's a lot of rich people in the world, but like Pastor writes here, you can't take money with you when you die, and you cannot buy salvation. Otherwise, we wouldn't need to become the gold. We just needed gold coins, is all he was telling us, right? No. He's telling us to become this gold inside. This gold, gold is the most precious metal, but it's not the metal that Yahweh's concerned about. It's our character. All right? It's the refining of our character to get us to be like he was way back when he was a policeman. Trusting in that plan of Yahweh enough to where he had no fear about asking somebody about the name Yahweh and worrying about rejection. That didn't matter to him at all. He was relentless in putting everything he had into the work of building the house of Yahweh. Because without this last work, this last house of Yahweh, everything that went before us counts for nothing and they won't be resurrected. Do you realize that? They without us. Anyways, there's a lot more on gold in here, but I'll leave it to you to read it in this book. And may Yahweh bless your understanding at this time, brothers and sisters. Pastor, this is your book here. And at this time, if everyone will please stand, we'll turn the services over to the great Kohan, Zephaniah Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Please be seated. We have a tremendous amount of news this feast, and so we're going to try to spread a little bit of it out. But we're going to start off this morning with a couple of shooting incidents, mass shooting incidents that are occurring so fast now, even the news is amazed. And the first one is 13 people shot in Chicago in one day. Now, they weren't shot dead, but that was in one shooting event. And then we had, for that one day, there was 23 people shot and 3 people were shot dead. And that's just Chicago itself. And remember, Chicago was just recently bragging that they were kind of getting the violence problem under control. They're not getting it under control. But what's interesting is they have the police chief there, and he's talking about how it's illegal guns that are causing the problem. And he just keeps saying this over and over again. And so what we need to do is we need to ban illegal guns. And that should solve the problem. I don't know how much that went over people's heads, but then we have a naval shipyard shooting, which is a man went on a rampage and he was in the military at a naval shipyard, which is a military base. And so now we need gun control on military bases. I mean, these stories should be making a point that gun control is not going to work. And then we have superbugs killing 23,000 people annually in the United States. And this is, remember, all these reports are lagging. So if you were to look at what the numbers are right now, it would probably be more like 50,000 people annually. And if they were honest about it, it's probably 100,000. But they say that this is alarming and it's actually shocking. 2 million Americans get sick with superbugs every year. And the reason they're concerned about this is actually has the potential to actually shut down the hospitals completely, because that's where most of these superbugs are coming from. And then we have John Kerry, and he's giving an energetic speech saying that the UN report strongly supports USA conclusion that Assad launched a chemical attack. And you can see from this that the U.S. is still considering and will use military action against Syria, despite what some are calling a checkmate by Putin. It turns out that checkmate was really just check, because they're still pushing this thing. And then we have CNN discussing Putin's attitude toward the USA. And this shows what Malachi Martin brought out years ago. Remember, Malachi Martin published his book in 1990, and he did his interviews in the 90s, the early 90s. I heard them myself on the radio, and that was when he was mentioning how Russia was a teddy bear that could become a grizzly. And the man that was the president at that time was Boris Yeltsin. And in this piece, the commentators are discussing how Putin is poisonous in his attitude toward the United States. And they actually say, remember good old Boris Yeltsin. So this shows exactly what Pastor is saying, that Russia used to be a teddy bear, and now it's a grizzly. And they're all noticing that. So let's play the news.
Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrayl Hawkins. Well, Jeff, from superpowers to superbugs, it seems like mankind and the environment that he has created for himself, of course, through a series of poor choices, is starting to collapse on itself and also to implode. Yeah, from one step to another. Bacteria are becoming more resistant to drugs through overuse, and it appears that there's no genuine trust in the international community. And here at home, local violence is showing no signs of slowing down anytime soon. But first, we're going to take you to our field correspondent, Larry McGee, for a report on the latest mass shooting in Chicago. Larry, it seems to be a growing epidemic throughout the nation, but Chicago seems to be kind of an epicenter. What are officials saying is the cause of this latest round of violence?
No motive has been released at this time, Katan, as police say suspected gang members armed with a heavy caliber rifle opened fire late night at a crowded park. In all, 13 people were wounded, including a 3-year-old child. Amazingly, no one was killed in the incident, and police are still searching for the gunman. And this was only one of several shootings here in Chicago, where 23 people were wounded and 3 died in just one night. Children on bicycles, riding scooters, and in cars with parents have all been shot this year. 18 of them, 15 years old or younger, died, and 3 of them were under 6. The 3-year-old, who was shot in the head but is expected to pull through, witnessed his uncle gunned down just 2 weeks ago in an environment where some residents say violence is starting to become an accepted part of life.
Now, Larry, have the local officials mentioned anything about coming up with a plan to stop this current wave of violence or prevent future acts of violence from taking place?
Chicago Police Superintendent Gary McCarthy says the real culprit is illegal guns, which belong on the battlefield and not street corners. And in an interview, he stated that while his expectation is that there will be violence, he also believes that they will be reducing it all the time. Progress, not victory, is his motto. Meanwhile, Mayor Emanuel also released a statement in an effort to reassure and comfort those struggling to cope with the violence that has become the curse of this city. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan, Jeff, back to you.
We appreciate your report, Larry. Well, the carnage doesn't stop in Chicago. Another deadly mass shooting has once again occurred, this time in our nation's capital. This marks the 3rd mass shooting in our nation this year. The headquarters of the Naval Sea Systems Command was the target this time. Now, one lone gunman so far that we know of went on this latest attack, leaving behind 13 dead in his wake and numerous others injured, including a police officer. Now, one of the dead is the alleged gunman, a Navy reservist, 34-year-old Aaron Alexis, who also worked as a Navy contractor.
Of course, the motive for this latest mass shooting in what appears to be a growing social epidemic is not known, but authorities are putting the pieces together as to how it unfolded. Well, shortly after 8:30 in the morning, a little after the shooting began, dozens of D.C. Metro Police converged on the Washington Naval Yard as the report, a shooter on the loose, spread, and naval employees were running for their lives trying to get out. One such employee, Todd Brundage, said, "People were pushing, shoving, they were falling down. After we came outside, people were climbing the walls to get out of the place. It was just crazy."
Navy Commander Tim Gyrus was outside in an alley when a man that he did not know approached him and told him there was a shooter inside. Now, the commander responded, "Well, that's news to me." And that was about the extent of our conversation, he said. And I heard 2 shots, and he, referring to the man that gave him that report, got hit. Now, as officers went door to door looking for the gunman, employees still inside were told that they need to take shelter in their offices. Now, many of the victims were on the 1st floor of the building in an open atrium when Alexis rained down gunfire from a higher floor in the building.
Employees at the base said that they are not checked for weapons when they enter the building. Getting guns through security is not difficult for anyone with proper ID. One officer was quoted as saying, "I could walk in any day I wanted to, and that was my disposition." You kind of hope that everyone else you work with doesn't do that and doesn't start shooting people in your office. Now, Vincent Gray, which is D.C.'s mayor, said there's a possibility that there's a second shooter still at large. Of course, they say that he was caught on surveillance cameras, so they're looking for him.
Now, the mayor said during a press conference there was a person wearing a dab olive uniform, around 50 years of age, around 5'10", African-American man, and we're continuing to look for him to determine what, if any, involvement he may have had. And that was what the mayor said. Now, the shooting led to shutdowns throughout the city. Less than a mile away, the Senate went into lockdown, and flights were briefly grounded at National Airport so that they wouldn't interfere with the police helicopters that were, hovering over the scene of the shooting.
Of course, with the possibility of another shooter at large, residents are being urged to stay indoors with their doors locked.
Well, despite the morality of man getting weaker, there are things that are getting stronger, but not in a beneficial way. We're talking about the microorganisms that are becoming more resistant to antibiotics, also known as superbugs. Now, a new report from the CDC says we may face catastrophic consequences if we don't act to control the superbugs. Dr. Holly Phillips, a CBS News medical contributor, said that this latest report by the CDC was shocking and that she believed the CDC wanted to send a powerful message, hence the reason they released these type of numbers.
She continued, "We've heard about superbugs in the past. Now, these are bacteria that are resistant to every antibiotic we have available. According to the CDC, over 2 million Americans get sick every year due to superbugs, and over 23,000 die. And of course, this is annually. These are more numbers that we're seeing with the flu, who actually get infected with these superbugs. And one of the purpose for the shocking release of these numbers was to mobilize the medical community and patients into action because we use antibiotics too much in both medicine and agriculture. In fact, 80% of antibiotics used in our nation are involved in farming and livestock. And some estimate that 50% of all antibiotics are prescribed shouldn't be prescribed, or they're used inappropriately.
50%.
That's quite a bit.
Well, Dr. Phillips said that it's a mix as to who's at fault for the overuse of antibiotics, because doctors want to treat patients and make sure that they are not going to miss something, but the patients don't want to have to wait a long time to get better. Now, another issue on the table is that when people get sick, they oftentimes have a cold virus, and an antibiotic won't do anything to kill the virus, only bacteria. Now, the bacteria that the CDC listed as most urgent is a class called CRE, and includes E. coli, Salmonella, Shigella, as well as gonorrhea and C. difficile. And these bacteria are the ones that are spreading very rampant in the hospitals.
That's kind of scary to think about that. I mean, the place people go for help, they're actually getting more infections while they're there. Right. Well, Dr. Holly Phillips concluded, there will be a time, or come a time, when we reach into our big arsenal of drugs for someone who's very sick, and we will not be able to help them. And I think that's why the CDC really wanted to get this message out there.
Well, once again this week, Secretary of State John Kerry spoke on the evidence the United States has regarding the Syrian chemical attacks and the importance of putting a stop to the Assad government. Now, after Kerry presented the evidence, he said, the world can decide whether sarin was used by the regime, which has used chemical weapons before, the regime which had the rockets, had the weapons, or whether opposition secretly went unnoticed into a territory they don't control to fire rockets they don't have, containing sarin they don't possess, to kill their own people. Then, without even being noticed, he said, they just disassembled it all, packed up, and got out of the center of Damascus, controlled by Assad.
Sense a little sarcasm in Secretary Kerry's statement there. Secretary Kerry went on to say this isn't complicated. When we said that we know what was true, we meant it. And now, before I head to New York for the UN General Assembly, we have a definitive UN report strengthening the case and solidifying our resolve. Now, the test comes. The Security Council must be prepared to act next week. It is vital to the international community to stand up and speak out in the strongest possible terms about the importance of enforceable action to rid the world of Syria's chemical weapons.
Well, the Putin-Obama relationship hasn't shown any real signs of improvement lately. In an opposite the editorial page, President Putin commented on President Obama's recent address to the nation by saying, "My working and personal relationship with President Obama is marked with growing trust. I appreciate this. I carefully studied his address to the nation on Tuesday, and I would rather disagree with the case he made on American exceptionalism."
President Obama had said in his address to the nation that the United States policy is what makes America different. It's what makes us exceptional. To this, Putin said, "It is extremely dangerous to encourage people to see themselves as exceptional, whatever the motivation."
Andrew Sullivan, founding editor of The Dish, was asked if he was surprised at these comments President Putin made. He said, "I think the argue of American exceptionalism is interesting and important for Americans to hear it, because that's what the rest of the world feels a lot of the time. What Americans take for granted," he said, "is that because we are an exceptional country, we can do things that other countries cannot do." Well, at some point, he went on to say that other countries are going to say, "Why? What gave you the right to do all this stuff?"
Sure. Mr. Sullivan concluded, "And so in that sense, I think it reminds us what the rest of the world sees. Even though America's doing it for good reasons and with good intentions, I think there is and Putin represents this perfectly, there's a sense of, who do you think you are? And this is what he says."
Well, Christiane Amanpour, chief international correspondent for CNN, agreed with Andrew Sullivan's comments and added, "This is so Putin," she said. "It's like he just said, 'Who do you think you are, President Obama? Who do you think you are, United States?' He just has these really poisonous relations right now with the United States." She concluded, "It hasn't always been like this. Remember good old Boris Yeltsin. He was a Russian president the U.S. could work with."
I think they compared Boris Yeltsin in Russia at that time to being like a teddy bear. Of course, now Putin in Russia is more like a grizzly bear.
Well, from deadly shootings to deadly superbugs, and with the threat of nuclear war looming at this time, the world continues to become an unsafe place. Now, Yisrayl Hawkins of the House of Yahweh has repeatedly stated that only a fool could look at the world's events today and not see that prophecy is being fulfilled. To learn more about these prophecies and what you can do to come out of this world, call or write the House of Yahweh today and request your free Prophetic Word magazine or monthly newsletter.
You can contact the House of Yahweh at P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. Or you can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Don't forget to visit them on the web at www.yahweh.com or www.yisraelhawkins.com. Or send them an email at info@yahweh.com. And all calls outside the United States, please call the number on your screen.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is Yisrayl Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.
Everyone please stand. The greatest teacher in the world, our pastor and overseer, the great Kohan Yisrayl Hawkins. Hello, everyone.
Man, what a beautiful sight. Yahweh, this is your children, your house. Wow. Wow. Okay, one big one. Oh boy. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Welcome home. Put that where everybody can sit. You know, I'll get it to go in here in a minute. Everything is so beautiful today at the house of Yahweh. I'm so messed up mess in this world. Sometimes I just want to push it out and push the world away, and just kind of pretend we're all alone, you know. Man, oh man. But of course, the world is going to be a part of us one of these days, and that's Yahweh's plan. All the people that we've known that's lived and died, you know, you're the ones that's going to receive the power to resurrect them and of course give them the chance to see what you're seeing now, the beautiful peace, the peaceful solution, character education that Yahweh is offered mankind. He refused it, so he withdrew it and said, well, you take this instead, and one of these days you'll grow up and see that I'm right. The House of Yahweh is not just here. It's this message is going out in so many different ways now. We've got people working on these, on this almost day and night, trying to reach the world, and we are reaching the world. The message, and I got some later update on that one. I couldn't believe the amount. Yisrayl Hawkins published a new prophetic word magazine explaining why sickness and disease is so rampant. Now, I called this morning because I thought they'd made a mistake in the amount of newspapers that picked this up and is running this news story. But I said 82,000. That's not possible. So I called them and I said, did you make a mistake on this? No, we didn't make a mistake. 82,338 news medias are running that thing. Well, that was it was 81,000. It was 81,000 yesterday. 81,684. Now that was at 2:55 p.m. and at 7 a.m. this morning. 16 hours later, it came up to 82,338 and still climbing. So I don't know what readers they have, but you know, that's reaching a lot of people, showing why we're having sickness and disease. The next one that came out, that they put out later, Yisrayl Hawkins says Pope Francis is teaching the same thing Satan taught Eve in Genesis chapter 3, and offers truth through live sermons. So far, this is just put out, and it's already being published in 43,290 papers. I understand now it's going. The international news is picking up on this and carrying it. Well, here we have, as Shaul has already showed you, the Yahweh's way, the peaceful solution, character education that teaches you to have peace, peace with your children, peace at home, peace throughout the world. We can stop wars, stop all sickness, all disease. Yahweh said they will learn war no more when this work is finished. So that is a wonderful promise right there. Learn war no more. The Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. When you practice this, it kind of gives you the answers in advance. I was talking to one of our young priests, and I won't say too much about it because he's wanting to give a sermon on it, he said. And, but I said, it shows you how every action, it demands a reaction. So when you say something, make sure that you want your words to bring you the reaction that you want coming your way. Now, think it over. Stop. Think it over. Now, if you're saying something sarcastic to a person, the reaction is going to be what to you? Is that the action you want? No. Then you think of something to say that'll bring the action that you want into your life. Now, it'll also help that person to bring the actions he wants into his life too. And this is what the Peaceful Solution Character Education is about. It's about much more than this. It brings the child up to growing up to be like Yahweh, and of course being like the Peaceful Solution Character Education program. You're what you learn. You're what you practice. This is what I hope to make everyone understand, that Yahweh set things in motion in His plan. Nothing occurs without Him being the author of it and okaying that move, especially when it comes to His work. And people have actually lost their lives trying to interfere with that work that He had planned. But if you'll just start watching, you'll see how He's guiding and protecting His house. And it's a beautiful thing when you see it. I do want to make you welcome. We're trying everything that we possibly can to make you feel welcome at home here and feel like that you could live here. Praise Yahweh. That's what we're going to be doing soon. And, of course, we will go from here and bring others in, and you'll be teaching others, 2 billion of them, in fact, very soon. I asked at this feast that you try to make sure that your children enjoy the feast. But, of course, in righteousness, not in sports activities and, stupidity. The boy that whose body was eaten up with cancer. I don't know if we played that or not, but 12 years old, born with cancer. Well, that's going on all over the world now. Millions of them. They're being born without hands, without half of their brain, with no lungs sometimes, no limbs. The deformities are so, it's just, it's heartbreaking to see it. But then this is what Yahweh allowed man to choose to begin with. He gave them His way. They refused it, so He took it back. And He said, here's your tree mixed with righteousness and evil. And when you get ready to repent, well, you'll let me know. Well, of course, the world is, it's about ready to repent. But first off comes the nuclear wars that we're expecting now any time. Almost 40 years back, I was trying to figure this up this morning because I got started thinking about this at 2 o'clock last night when Yahshua woke me up and started putting these things in my mind. But about 40 years back, the homestead, we bought it, I think, in about 1969 or 70, somewhere along in there, maybe before that. But I remember I got the house built, and we had a patio on behind that house, and there's people here today that came to that first service on that patio at what we call the homestead. That was the first land that Yahweh gave us in this area. The second land that He gave us was before before the persecution started taking place. It started taking place a little, but he gave us some other land, and we set up a mobile home because we outgrew the homestead. But on that back patio, my brother and the House of Yahweh in Odessa, they came down here and helped us to dedicate this work on that day, on that patio at the homestead. And people are here and witnessed that, what took place there that day. The patio, the house was, the living room was too small, so we moved the people out. That's when, Shaul was talking about the work there, beginning when I was on the police department. That's when I met David Yahuda. And he and I started studying, and he became a part of the work in a few months or years there, a big part of the work. But there was many others, and I see them here. Desi Demetro told me this morning, what was it, 30-something years ago. Well, I called and asked, was that right, or 31? 31? She said, she called me the other day and told me that this feast, 31 years ago, I believe it was, that she saw me for the first time in the press room, and I believe that we were putting together a Prophetic Word magazine, and she came in, her and her sons, and introduced herself, and I told one of the elders, I said, take them back there and put them to work. And of course they went willingly and went to work, been working in Yahweh's work ever since. Well, anyway, on the patio, the house, we quickly outgrew that, and a man called me and asked me, did I want to buy a mobile home, just out of the clear blue now. And I thought nothing of it, I said, well, I'd look at it, and if the price is right. And all I could see when I looked at that mobile home was this would make a beautiful sanctuary, a mobile sanctuary. And so I bought the thing, and we set it up there on property that Yahweh led me to buy on 603, the property on 603. And we set that up and started holding services, and the neighbors would drive by real slow, and it almost, I think, is going to break their neck, looking at what was going on. But pretty soon we got called to the Beard Courthouse, and they were trying to find something we were doing wrong, and something where they could shut us down, persecute us for it, because they found the name was called House of Yahweh, that just started in a mobile sanctuary. And the rumor got out that the first feast, which was the Feast of Tabernacles, we slept outside in booths. And the people are shaking their heads, yes, they remember that. We let the women sleep inside the sanctuary, and us men slept outside under the sukkahs, and it was raining all the way around us, And it rained for 7 days straight. All around us, but never rained on us. Now, if you could believe this, knowing Yahweh, I know this is what took place. Before he created the earth, he had his plans made to have his first feast over there in that mobile home and have the rain shut off and work this great miracle all the way around that house for the people. Now, these are the true miracles. True miracles. We got a song called The True Miracles. If we ever get it recorded, the sound crew keeps sending it to me, and I keep rejecting it and telling them what's wrong and keep sending it back, but we're getting closer all the time. So maybe before the feast is out, you might start praying for this. Everybody, start praying for our sound room. The sound room. They're really overworked. They're working day and night, but that's what they want to do. I haven't asked them to do it. They're just doing it. There's so much work going on in the house of Yahweh. People don't know about it, but it's going on day and night. Well, the living room services lasted about 3 months, and the patio lasted helping us with it. But there's something that we did back then on each Sabbath day, and I know you'll remember this. Tanya was there, and Tanya helped me fix dinner for everyone. This was beautiful. We fixed a dinner for everyone that came, and we enjoyed it. And this went on. We next thing came the mobile sanctuary because we outgrew the living room in the house at the homestead. And we moved over there. We didn't have a kitchen, but we tore out all the walls and left the bathroom, and then we left one wall there with a stove and refrigerator, so we actually could fix food in advance, take it to the mobile sanctuary, and we all ate together. It was just such a beautiful thing. And the house started growing, of course, and we finally, in a short time, outgrew the mobile sanctuary, and we started building the sanctuary in town, which is now called the press room. That's on 1025 Truth and Prophecy Lane. They named it T&P Lane, but they didn't know what the T meant or the P meant. And the House of Yahweh, of course, had to enlighten them some. And we hired a lawyer so it would go on record, and we made a request to the city to change it from T&P to Truth and Prophecy, and it was quickly denied, but it's on record. Well, we offered them that opportunity to do this, and of course it was denied because we were called the House of Yahweh. As the lawyer said, you should have changed your name to House of God and you wouldn't have had any trouble. I was telling David this morning, I just found this last week, but in Egypt, where the gods were worshipped, all of them, and of course this is where Christianity comes from, was the worship in Egypt, and their God, the way they say gods there, it's almost like the same spelling as Elohim, which you find in Hebrew, but it's changed just a little bit. And I was so glad. I've been hunting this for years to try to find where that word was used in Egypt, and I knew it was, and finally it's what they call their gods. But it's changed just a little bit from the word Elohim, that is the spelling of it in English, but it's the same, Elohim, and means gods. And of course, they brought that God worship out with them when they came out of Egypt, and we find in 1 Samuel 7, that this includes the Easter celebration, the goddess and the gods and the rest of the gods, and celebrating their pagan holidays. And it was celebrated long before they came out of Egypt, and when it talks about them going back into Egypt, this means they went back to their God worship, which came with them from Egypt. And that's what Yahweh said in chapter 8 of 1 Samuel. But anyway, back to the small dining room in the Truth and Prophecy Lane. We had a small kitchen, which I spent hours making my chili, and that's what made that so famous, I think. No. But I would make a huge pot of chili, and people would suffer from it all night, I think, but they said it was so delicious, they just couldn't pass it up. But the eating together, the dining together, it was missing for so many years, and because we ran out of a place. We outgrew it, and we outgrew the kitchen, and so we stopped enjoying the Sabbath. I'm telling you, eating and drinking is a big part of keeping a feast day. Yes, very big. Yeshua worked miracles so the people could enjoy the Sabbaths, the Sabbaths of Yahweh. He worked miracles to feed them. But while on T&P Lane, I bought 5 acres of land. Didn't know why, but the man called me and said, would you like to buy some land out on Oak Forest near Clyde? And come to find out, it was 5 acres of land with a mobile home on it. And don't know why he called me. But I said, well, I'll go look at it. If the price is right, I'll buy it. Well, I bought it. Now, that is when you come in the south gate. We didn't own this land here at that time. But we had 5 acres down there on Oak Forest Lane. Didn't know what I was going to do with it at the time. I thought, well, maybe I could rent the rent house there, but I don't think we ever did. I don't think we ever rented it. Later on, much later on, let me see, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's see. I bought the 5 acres called now the South Gate. That's where you come in with the super sukkah down there. Come under the super sukkah. But Yahweh took a step there. And I didn't realize it at the time. But I bought the land, went ahead and bought the land because it was put in front of me. Now, after that, the man that owned this 44 acres here, that this house is on right now, our campground, the man that owned that called me and asked me, did I want to buy this land? So I promptly jumped in my car and came out here to see him. And I said, Richard, I think I would like to build the house of Yahweh here. And I was standing right here about where that stage is. And one of our engineers checked it out, and he said it's the tallest place in Callahan County. Highest land, Callahan County. And we were standing on it. And still, at that time now, I didn't even think about this 5 acres down here joining this 44. But I want to show you how Yahweh works. The road coming into this property right here at that time came off of Highway 258. And we drove through, it was a right-of-way that had been given to the Beatty family, and they came through that about a quarter of a mile or more of that property is also dedicated where the electric companies could come through and everything to get to this property. That was the only way you could get to this property by road. The 44, the road to the 44 came from the north. Then, all of a sudden, the neighbors found out that we were putting House of Yahweh out here, building House of Yahweh, so they closed the road. They took bulldozers up here, and they took cross ties and built a mound to where we couldn't get to the property. Now, if Yahweh hadn't have been thinking ahead, we would have been blocked to get in this property. And we were already being hated at that time because we were called House of Yahweh. So we would have been blocked from getting into this 44. And the electric company called me and said, we can't get in to check your meters. It said, apparently the neighbors out there are angry about something, and they've closed the road to us too. We can't get in. And he said, we had a right-of-way, a written right-of-way. He said, we can take this to court if you want to. And I said, how long would that take? And he said, probably years. Well, I got to thinking about this 5 acres, and I said, well, you know, I got 5 acres on the south of that property down there that joins Oak Forest. I said, but we don't have a road coming through it. He said, we'll send our bulldozers out, and we'll make you a road through that acreage into this 44. I told him where to go, and I said, save every tree that you can possibly save. Don't cut it down. And that's the reason you see these trees, you got to drive around, because I don't like to destroy trees. Well, that was the first sign, too, of Yahweh protecting His work. He wanted that work here. And the gates of hell will not prevail against this work. On this rock I will establish my house, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Now that was Yeshua doing the speaking. Yeshua is the high priest that Yahweh planned in advance and spoke to you about in Genesis 49, along with a branch that Yahweh says, behold this branch now, because He's the one that's going to build the house. Well, lo and behold, on the 44 acres, the house was built, and we're sitting here. The house of Yahweh is sitting in the house of Yahweh at this time. You are the house of Yahweh. Well, of course, we had a big house, and for a long, long time, though, we didn't have the Sabbath meals that you've got to have, you know, to make Yahweh's family complete. You know, and there's so many scriptures that go with this. You know, it's just amazing the amount of scriptures. If you the very first scripture is go seek the place. Yahweh chooses to place His name. Well, here it was, and Yahweh had bought property ahead of time so we'd have room to get in between the haters of Yahweh's house. And the people they hated us so much that the people, I'm bragging about this hatred, you know, most people would shun hatred. But in the court in Beard, where I was arrested on false charges, taken to court, and it was proven in court now, our attorneys hired a special team, a professional team, to go to these Abelin and this surrounding area, and they brought this out in court. It was proven we were the most hated people on the face of the earth. And I said, praise Yahweh. We just fulfilled another prophecy. Well, of course, our haters here, you know, they don't know the house, but they all vowed. Was hated so much, these people on Oak Forest, they all vowed not to sell property to any member of the house of Yahweh. Guess who they sold to? Well, that's Christianity. But Moshe said, Yahweh inspired Moshe to say, go to the place, seek the place. Now, he is talking future, of course. Moshe was writing books to guide Yahweh's people. And he was talking future, and he said, seek the place that Yahweh chooses to place His name. And there you must go. And he said, there you must eat. So, and you know, we take that word lightly there, but he means eat together, of course. Eat together with one another, with your families, you know, your whole family. And this, too, you can make, in this way, you can make the feast special to your children. Try every way you can. Talk to them. Find out what they like. You don't have to tell them you're going to do it, you know, but if you can surprise them and get it done, that is wonderful, you know, at feast times. As long as it's righteous, as long as it'll make your children look forward to going to the house, then do it. Do it for them. Well, there he said, go and eat and rejoice. Rejoice. Go and eat and rejoice. Those are all commands there in that 12th chapter of Deuteronomy. Solomon, if you look at how, when he was following Yahweh now, when he was actually following Yahweh strictly, if you look at the amount of cattle and sheep and goats and things that man butchered for the people, in trying to make this a joyous feast, you know, it's extreme, the amount of animals that was butchered, besides the corn and the wheat and so forth that came in, you know, as tithe and was used at the feast days when Solomon was king. It's a beautiful thing what we see there. And Yahshua, of course, I said he fed the thousands, 5,000 and 7,000. He did this to make them welcome, to make them enjoy Yahweh's way. And of course, if he had had a house to have set this up in, you know, he didn't. He worked in the fields, but he got the work done nevertheless. And he got the message taught to these people, this 5,000 and 7,000, when they came there. They might have came there to eat food, but he fed them the laws of Yahweh and the prophecies of Yahweh. And that is the reason we have this book right here today that we can hold up now and because this book was outlawed, but because of Yahshua's teaching and because of Yahshua beholding the branch, because he didn't do this in his lifetime. This book was taken away from mankind in 70 CE when the religions of Daniel 2 through 7, that is shown there, when those religions decided they could not operate on Mount Sinai, and they decided to go to the hills of Rome and set their church that doesn't have a name. It's just universal. Universal what? It's universal deception is what it should be called, because they've got the whole world deceived. Catholic means universal. Universal is not a name. It's geographic. It just tells you it's universal. It's everywhere. But they changed their name from Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, and Herodians. The Herodians are the ones that owned the army. And then when they got to the 7 hills of Rome, then, they didn't actually change their name. They had all this God worship that they display there gladly to everyone. You know, they have gods everywhere, sticking up everywhere you look. And of course, those gods, many of them came from Egypt that they was worshiping. Isis and Ishtar, you know, they were famous in Egypt. That was their 2 top gods, the chief of the gods in Egypt. And they're still worshipped at the Vatican in Rome. Well, it kind of shows you what they are and where it came from. But they knew they couldn't operate where they were operating because of the message that Yahshua put out to these people that he fed. Yes, he fed them. He made them feel great, and he fed them spiritual food and physical food as well. And it's recorded, Matthew 25. You know, you can read it later, 25, Matthew 25:37. But Yeshua said, when you have done it to the least of these, you have done it unto me. Come, you hungry, eat with us. Well, once again, we're keeping the Holy Sabbath actually holy now, right now in the house. Praise Yahweh. We'll be having a holy meal on the Holy Sabbath on the last day, a community meal, so prepare for that. If there's anything your children want in the way of dessert, then get it beforehand. Make sure you get it for them, and maybe surprise them with it and tell them this is Yahweh's house. If you have a gripe, don't show it on your face. Now, prove that you're a grown-up. Prove that you're an adult. Prove that you're a righteous person. Smile. Even though you're hating to, smile. Let me finish this. Go to the closet and lock yourself in and tell Yahweh what you got to gripe about. But make sure nobody outside hears it. And your Father will hear you in secret, and He'll reward you with a repentant mind so you can come back and face your child and your wife or your husband with a smile on your face. Yes, a smile, not that, but a smile. Make your children, your wife, your husbands feel absolutely wonderful at this feast, so they will want to come back and bring you with them again at the next feast. You know, I'd see this parking lot empty on the Sabbath. The people, there was something missing, and I knew it. But the people would come to services grudgingly. They would listen, they'd rejoice in the service, the spiritual food they got, but the physical food was missing. And that made a big difference. And of course, they would listen to the service. Their stomachs were growling because they got up late. They didn't eat breakfast. Now they got their breakfast waiting here on them. Now you think of a difference that makes. Now, if you don't think this is true, you can go to Book 2 and see what the apostles did. But the apostles, it became so great as it grew, like it's growing now, and like it's been growing from the beginning. The apostles got so busy that it was taking all their time to feed and take care of the people, so they started enlisting deacons and deaconess and so forth to help in the work. And of course, one of the apostles said, don't even think about taking care of a widow unless she has fed the hungry, washed the saints' feet, did all kinds of services in the house of Yahweh. That's servitude. I get these beautiful letters on my bread, and I forgot to bring the bread sack this week. It had a great message on it and said, sing this. And I'm going to sing it to you. So when I get it put to music, I'll sing it to you. But it makes me rejoice just reading that bread sack that the Sabbath bread comes in of a morning when I pick it up. I run all the way down here to the cafeteria and I run all the way back. But I see now it's quite a change. You see, of a morning, when I'm watching them, I hear the music start playing. I see the cars start driving in before it's ever daylight. and people coming. I hear laughter and singing going on in the parking lots as they're parking the cars, and they head immediately in to get them something to eat and drink. And I said, this is of Yahweh. This is beautiful. Now, this starts about 6 or 6:30 of a morning, sometimes earlier. And then I look out of an evening, and getting late on the Sabbath, and the people are still here. The parking lots are still full, and people hating to go home even at that time. Well, that's the house of Yahweh then and now. And we have what Yahweh wants it to be. Don't forget, help your children, enjoy the feast. If you turn to Deuteronomy, I will read one scripture, Deuteronomy 6, and here is where Yahweh is telling you to care for your children. Most of all, make that child joyous that he's at this feast. Make him want to come back to the next feast and the next, and be here every Sabbath day. Let him know that this is a joyous place to be in this time of war and hatred. But Deuteronomy 6, he said, verse 4, Hear, O Yisrayl. That's me. It's also the nation of Israel. Hear, O Yisrayl, Yahweh our Father, Yahweh is one. This means much more, and I got several sermons I want to bring on this unity, and hope to bring some of it this feast. And you must love Yahweh your Father. I do. I love Yahweh with all my heart. I've totally dedicated my life to this being, and I want to bring forth what I see in this Holy Scriptures, the peaceful solution, character education. I want to take it to the entire universe. And I've wanted that for several years, and I won't stop. I won't stop unless I am stopped physically, but I don't think I will be from what I see in the Scriptures. I won't be stopped. This is our job, yours and mine. You got a forever position in Yahweh's house, and the only way you can go is up from here, unless you quit. You must love your Father, Yahweh, with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these laws are what's going to bring peace, and they will learn war no more, these laws. But you've got to put it in their minds. Look at verse 7. And you must teach them diligently to your children, and talk about them when you sit in the house, and when you walk on the road, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. You know, I was talking to some this week about hanging the fruit on the sukkah, and this was such a joyous look on the children's face when this was mentioned, that we could, and of course they worked late last night, and they got up early this morning, the children. And they hung fruit on this super sukkah in the land of peace down here. Where the horses are peacefully grazing and eating from a bale of hay, the goats are waiting to be milked. Today's an even day, so I guess the women milked the goats and the children watched this morning, hopefully. That's the way it's supposed to be. If not, well, we got another even day, odd day coming up. And remember that. We need women milking the goat. We need the children watching and learning how to milk a goat. This is a very joyous time and very joyous thing for a child to see where milk comes from, how Yahweh made that goat to eat that grass and weeds of all colors and give white milk and butter for you to go with your honey. That's what the bees do. Yahweh made the bees for that purpose, to gather honey and put it together for you to eat. Yes, Yahweh did that for you. He sends the grasshoppers, and people think, well, they are destroying my crops, but they're a food supply in themselves, and our young children get this, and you're going to be blessed, by the way, to have grasshoppers available. If you've never eaten a grasshopper, he's a delicious little thing and very healthy for you. But that's just some of the joys. You take your children, the women on the odd days, their men are not allowed out here on the south side at that time, from the parking lot on down. So you can take your children or go with your friends or go by yourself, whatever, take your camera, and enjoy this feast. And then the men on the even days, you got the south side, and the women are not allowed there on the even days. And you can learn to milk a goat too if you don't know how. I talk about this team of horses we have. I was raised with horses and mules. I'm an Okie. I spent a lot of time in a wagon. When we would be going somewhere, I would sit in a wagon. I'd pull my King James Bible out of my pocket and lean back against the sideboard on the wagon, and I would read my King James version at that time, learning the scriptures on the way to town. That's the way we travel back and forth to town. 80 years ago, I'm the same age of Moses, of Moshe now, when Yahweh sent him back to Egypt to get the 12 tribes and bring them out of Egypt. Yes, same age. I saw the new moon first this month. I saw it first. I pointed it out to Kohan Shaul. I said, see that limb on the tree? Look just a little ways to the right of it. He said, oh, yeah, I see it. And then I showed it to several others, and I'm going to quote Moshe, my eyes are not dimmed, and neither is my pace slackened. That word pace means your hours that you put in working. It don't mean I can outrun anybody here anymore. I used to outrun all of you, but I stopped running. So you know, I had to start moving my hand, and I can't get my writing all done. So I said and I said and I said and I write and I write and I write, so you could read and it can go out to all the newspapers. But as Moshe said when he was begging Yahweh to let him go ahead and finish this, he said, my eyes are not dimmed, and neither is my pace slackened. I can do this job. Oh, that's what I'm saying to Yahweh now. I'm thinking that Yahweh hopefully will see fit to keep everyone here alive, witness this world go down, so you won't have any doubts about what sin brings. Right now we're seeing so much sickness and disease and war, and surely if you watch the news you'll see it increasing. We're playing it here, but it's increasing daily now. And of course the children, they're being born with these diseases. You know, a 12-year-old boy that already operated on took his left arm off, and then they said the doctors then come back and told him that it had entered his lungs. The cancer had gotten his bloodstream and entered his lungs, and now it's eating his lungs up, and he has but a short time to live. You know, this is the kind of world that we're in right now. Hitler created the same thing when he was trying to create a super race, and he was turning the army in to commit rape and fornication, adultery, day after day, night after night. And he brought forth a bunch of idiots in Germany that didn't have sense enough to do anything but pull the trigger. Well, we're right back to that shape again. America is getting into that shape right now. Have nothing to do with this world, brethren. Be thankful that Yahweh has set His house up, and the gates of hell won't prevail against you. May Yahweh bless you, and I'll turn the service back to the next leader. I love you!